Hello, listeners. Thanks for joining in. I'm Z Johnson. Many organizations are looking for ways to connect with employees and make them feel like they belong. One of the best ways to do this is by building a workplace that's psychologically safe, or one that allows employees to feel comfortable being vulnerable, expressing their opinions, asking for help, and much more. When employees feel cared for, considered, and safe, there are no limits to what they can do for the bottom line. I chat with Maggie Smith, Senior Vice President of HR at Traliant, and she details how this can be done. What does a psychologically safe workplace look like?
So for me, I think, if you have a culture of psychological safety in your workplace, it is going to look like engaged employees who are risk takers, employees who are willing to experiment and try new things, also willing to express themselves, and do all of that without fear of failure or fear of retribution.
And what's the first sign that an organization needs to rethink their well-being strategy? Typically, the very first signal of that.
Well, I think, juxtapose the type of culture I just described with one where employees feel too intimidated to speak up or they're hesitant to share an idea. I also feel like when your vocal employees get quiet, that's a sign that something's wrong. Or if employees aren't speaking up at all and they previously did, that's a concern. So I think when people are being too quiet, then you really need to rethink, like something's going on.
So is there a fine line between regularly checking in with employees and then being overbearing? And then a second part to that, do different employees require different check-in approaches?
Yeah, let me start with the second part, if I could, and kind of work backwards. So absolutely different employees require different check-in approaches. And I think, it's just like managing employees requires different approaches. It's unfortunately not one size fits all. That'd be a lot easier if it was, but it really requires managers in particular to know their employees and then, check in with them on a cadence that makes sense for the employee and for the employer, the manager. I think when there's new people that join an organization, you need to check in more. You should be really checking in very routinely, maybe a formal check-in once a week. I think even more if you're in a remote environment, because you're really working at first to build that relationship and build that trust between new employee and the manager. With employees, you really need to take the time to get to know them as a person and really, what's going on in their life outside of work and how does that come into work.
So we know that check-ins is one way for an organization to build psychological safety. So in addition to check-ins, what are some solid and effective tips for organizations to be able to build that?
I would say definitely create multiple avenues for your employees to provide feedback and suggestions. So, for example, an online anonymous suggestion box could be one way. Routinely do surveys, different types of surveys, and then definitely take action on employee suggestions when appropriate and let others know. I'll give you an example. Here at Traliant, we just did our first ever DEI-specific survey. We had an outside agency do the survey, compile the results, benchmark those, and that was really based on a conversation with an employee. So as an outcome of that conversation, and then, on our town hall this week, we reviewed the data from the survey and said, hey, we did this based on the input of an employee. So I think that's another one for sure. And then I think also really treating mistakes in the workplace as an opportunity for learning. I think everything's fixable. Most everything's fixable. And I think that's how you learn from mistakes.
Is there anything else that you would like to add or say about the topic?
I think it can be tough because I don't want HR practitioners to get discouraged, because sometimes you could kind of do, quote unquote, all the right things, and there still could be areas or pockets in an organization where maybe they're not feeling as psychologically safe as others. So let's say it's a sales organization and sales are down. That could impact that. People are going to be afraid and they're going to be concerned, how is this going to impact me? So I think in those times, honest, transparent communication, checking in with your employees and supporting them through that is a good avenue to follow.